Jack the Ripper. The name Jack the Ripper came from a sinister letter sent to London police in 1888, signed by the supposed killer himself. Whether he wrote it or not, the name stuck, and so did the fear. Eyewitnesses described a well-dressed man in his late 20s to 40s, moving through London's gaslit streets like a shadow. In the fall of 1888, he murdered at least 5 women, possibly more, in the Whitechapel district. Each victim was brutally mutilated, some disemboweled, others with organs removed, suggesting the killer had some medical knowledge or a twisted obsession with anatomy. His killing grounds were the dark, narrow alleys of Whitechapel, London, where he slipped away unseen, leaving the world's most enduring mystery in his wake. The Axeman of New Orleans. Known as the Axeman because of his brutal calling card, breaking into homes and killing sleeping victims with their axes. Though never seen clearly, the killer was thought to be in his 30s or 40s, stealthy and physically strong, creeping through back doors and alleyways. Between 1918 and 1919, he murdered at least 6 people and injured several others, usually Italian grocers. In one eerie letter to the police, he claimed to be a demon from hell and promised to spare anyone playing jazz music. The city complied, and that night, not a soul was harmed, struck last in New Orleans, Louisiana, then melted into history, leaving a legacy as haunting as it was bizarre. The Cleveland Torso Murderer. Between 1934 and 1938, he murdered at least 12, and possibly up to 20, people in the shantytown area known as Kingsbury Run. The victims were mostly the poor and homeless, targeted when no one would notice they'd gone. Even famed lawman Eliot Ness couldn't solve the case, though he tried until his dying day. Bible John. The nickname Bible John was coined after a chilling taxi ride where he quoted scripture to his final victim's sister, citing biblical judgment before vanishing into the Glasgow night. Witnesses described him as a sharply dressed man in his late 20s or early 30s, with reddish blonde hair and a crooked front tooth, someone who looked clean, polite, and well-spoken, masking a much darker intent. Between 1968 and 1969, he is believed to have murdered 3 women, all of whom had danced at the Barrowland Ballroom. They were later found brutally beaten and strangled, their bodies discarded near their homes. His killings ended as abruptly as they began in Glasgow, Scotland, near the Barrowland Ballroom, leaving behind a city frozen in fear, and a phantom who was never caught, the Freeway Phantom. Investigators coined the name after one of his victims was found near a freeway, and a note signed Freeway Phantom was tucked into her clothing. Based on his methodical abductions and messages, the FBI believed he was a black male in his 20s or 30s, educated and cunning, perhaps blending into society with terrifying ease. Between 1971 and 1972, he abducted and murdered 6 black girls, aged 10 to 18. Some victims were found days later, shoeless, their bodies dumped along Washington highways. One had a haunting note, allegedly written by the killer himself. His final victim was found near the Baltimore-Washington Parkway. His trail has gone cold ever since, yet his presence still looms over Washington, D.C., decades later. The Colonial Parkway Killer. The media dubbed the Unknown Killer after the scenic Colonial Parkway in Virginia, where multiple young couples were found murdered in their cars. Profilers believed the killer was a man in his late 20s or 30s, methodical and calm, someone who could approach couples undetected. Between 1986 and 1989, 4 couples were brutally murdered. Their bodies were found in or near their cars, sometimes partially clothed or doused in fuel. There was no clear motive and no pattern that police could follow. The killer last struck along the Colonial Parkway between Williamsburg and Jamestown, Virginia, where fear once gripped every parked car. The I-70 killer. In 1992, a string of cold-blooded murders began tracing their way along the Interstate 70 corridor, a major stretch of highway cutting through the heart of the Midwest. Each crime was linked by geography, method, and eerie precision, earning the killer the chilling title, the I-70 Killer. Eyewitnesses who survived or caught fleeting glimpses described him as a white man in his mid-20s to late 30s, average height, around 5'7" inches to 5'9" inches, with reddish or sandy brown hair. He carried himself with quiet confidence, never hurried, never loud, like someone who had done this before. Between April and May of 1992, 6 people were murdered across Indiana, Missouri, Kansas, and Illinois. Most were female store clerks, working alone during quiet shifts. The killer walked in, calmly shot them execution style with a .22 caliber pistol, and walked out. He rarely stole more than a few dollars from the register. Some registers weren't even touched. He wasn't killing for money. He was hunting. A year later, in 1993 and 1994, 2 more victims in Texas were shot in a nearly identical manner. One lived long enough to give police a composite sketch. Then, in 2001, a final, eerily similar killing occurred in Terre Haute, Indiana, reigniting fears that the I-70 killer had returned. His trail winds through America's Midwestern veins, gas stations and strip mall shops along I-70, places that blur together when you're speeding down the interstate. It's here, between Kansas and Ohio, that the killer moved like a ghost, leaving behind only shattered glass, empty cartridges, and unanswered questions. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below.